The Council of Mockery Commander Elena Vasquez walked through the massive corridors of Nexus Prime, the greatest space station ever built by the combined efforts of a dozen alien civilizations. The walls stretched high above her head, covered in materials that shifted color as she passed. Strange symbols flickered with their own light, marking directions in languages she had spent years learning to read. The air tasted metallic and carried scents she could not identify. Every step reminded her how far from Earth she truly was. The Galactic Assembly Hall could hold 10,000 beings, and today it was nearly full. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered to discuss trade, territory, and the endless, small wars that flared between star systems. Elena's footsteps echoed in the vast space as she made her way to the small section reserved for humanity. Around her, aliens of every shape and size moved with confidence born of centuries among the stars. The reptilian Dominion delegates stood nearly 3 meters tall, their scaled skin gleaming under the artificial lights. Their leader, Admiral Zethkar, watched Elena with yellow eyes that held no warmth. His species had conquered 12 star systems through pure military might, and they viewed humans as soft creatures who had barely learned to leave their home planet. Near the center of the hall, the crystalline collective representatives caught and reflected light in dazzling patterns. High Counselor Vrex rose above the others, her body formed from living crystal that had grown for over 2,000 years. Her kind had mastered energy manipulation and considered themselves the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. To them, humans were primitive children playing with chemical rockets. Elena took her place at the human delegation table and activated her translation device. The technology was a gift from the Galactic Assembly, one of the few pieces of advanced equipment they had shared with Earth. She looked across the hall at beings who could travel between stars in days, while human ships took months to reach the nearest colony. The session began with routine matters: trade disputes between mining companies that operated on distant worlds, territorial claims over asteroid fields rich in rare metals, border conflicts between species that had been fighting for longer than human civilization had existed. Elena listened and learned, taking notes on technologies and capabilities that Earth could barely dream of achieving. When her turn came to address the assembly, Elena stood slowly and activated the speaking platform. The hall grew quiet, but not from respect. The silence carried the weight of barely contained amusement. She had felt this same atmosphere during her previous visits to Nexus Prime. The great powers of the galaxy viewed humanity as an amusing distraction from serious business. Admiral Zethkar's voice rumbled across the hall like distant thunder. His translation device gave his words a mocking tone that needed no interpretation. The humans wished to speak again about their little problems with pirates and raiders. Perhaps they should consider staying closer to their homeworld if they cannot protect their colonies. Laughter rippled through the assembly, not the harsh sound of human amusement, but a collection of alien sounds that served the same purpose. The insect-like beings of the Hive Collective made clicking noises with their mandibles. The energy beings of the plasma courts flickered in. Patterns that Elena had learned meant contempt. Even the peaceful plant people of the green worlds rustled their leaves in what passed for their species' version of mockery. Elena had expected this response, but it still stung. She activated her presentation device and displayed images from recent attacks on human colonies, burned settlements, destroyed cargo ships, and casualty reports from worlds that had been peaceful just months before. The images were real, the suffering genuine, but the assembled aliens barely glanced at the display. High Counselor Vrex's crystalline voice rang like musical chimes, beautiful and cold. Honored Assembly, we have reviewed the human military capabilities through our standard evaluation protocols. Their largest warship generates less energy than our civilian transport vessels. Their fastest fighters move at speeds our cargo haulers consider inefficient. We cannot understand why they venture into dangerous space with such inadequate protection. The assembly erupted in what Elena now recognized as the galactic equivalent of applause. Different species showed approval in their own ways, but the message was universal. Humanity was weak, primitive, and unworthy of serious consideration. Elena's hands tightened on her notes, but her voice remained steady. Honored delegates, the Crimson Fleet has expanded their operations throughout the Outer Rim. They attack not just human colonies, but trading posts and mining operations belonging to many species represented in this assembly. Our request for assistance benefits everyone who uses those trade routes. Admiral Zethkar stood to his full, imposing height, his scales rippling with colors that Elena knew indicated aggressive dominance. Human Commander, your species has been members of this assembly for 15 years. In that time, you have contributed nothing of value to galactic civilization. Your technology is centuries behind our basic standards. Your military exists only on paper. Why should we waste resources protecting colonies that you established without adequate defenses? The truth in his words made Elena's face burn with shame. Earth's military consisted of 300 ships, most of them converted civilian vessels with basic weapons mounted on their hulls. The largest human warship carried nuclear missiles and chemical lasers while the aliens around her commanded vessels that could crack planets. Human colonies survived through isolation and luck, not strength. Elena tried once more. Our colonies produce agricultural products and minerals that many of your civilizations value. The trade relationships we have built benefit everyone involved. Protecting those colonies protects those economic partnerships. High Counselor Vrex's response came wrapped in false sympathy that somehow made it worse than open mockery. Dear human representative, your agricultural exports could be replaced by any of a dozen automated farming operations. Your mineral extraction capabilities are so limited that losing them would barely register in galactic economic reports. We understand that your species values these small achievements, but they are insignificant compared to the truly important matters we must address. Elena looked around the assembly hall and saw the same expression on every alien face, regardless of species or biology. Bored superiority. To them, humans were insects asking elephants for help with their ant problems. The great civilizations of the galaxy had real concerns. Wars between species that commanded thousands of star systems. Economic disputes involving more wealth than Earth's entire economy. Territorial conflicts that could reshape entire sectors of the galaxy. Captain James Chen sat in the observer section, wearing the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. He had said nothing during the session, but Elena noticed him check his personal communicator several times. Each time he looked at the device, his expression grew more serious. Something was happening that he was not sharing with the rest of the delegation. Admiral Zethkar delivered what Elena knew would be the final word on humanity's request. The Galactic Assembly has limited resources and many responsibilities. We cannot justify spending time and military assets protecting a species that refuses to develop adequate defenses for their territorial claims. Perhaps when humans achieve technology that surpasses the level of our children's educational toys, we will reconsider their requests for assistance. The assembly moved on to other business without further discussion. Elena gathered her materials and prepared to return to Earth with another failure to report. 15 years of diplomatic efforts had achieved nothing more than membership in an organization that viewed humanity as an amusing curiosity. The great powers of the galaxy would not lift a finger to help Earth protect its colonies. As the session ended and aliens began filing out of the hall, Elena noticed Captain Chen had disappeared. She had not seen him leave, but his seat in the observer section was empty. For a moment she wondered where he had gone, but her thoughts quickly returned to the impossible task of explaining another diplomatic failure to Earth's government. Elena walked back through the corridors of Nexus Prime, past displays of alien technology that humanity could not even understand, let alone duplicate. The message was clear. In a galaxy full of ancient and powerful civilizations, humanity was alone. They would have to find their own solutions to their problems, or watch their colonies burn while the galaxy's great powers discussed more important matters. The journey back to Earth would take 6 weeks aboard the fastest ship in humanity's fleet. During that time, the Crimson Fleet would continue their attacks, and human colonies would continue to fall. Elena had done her best, but her best had not been nearly enough. Humanity would have to face its enemies with nothing but courage, determination, and the primitive technology that made the galaxy's powers laugh. The Secret Awakening. 3 months after Elena's humiliation at the Galactic Assembly, Captain James Chen's small courier ship approached what appeared to be an unremarkable asteroid in the outer reaches of Jupiter's system. Asteroid designation 2157. Gamma looked exactly like thousands of others in the belt. Its surface was covered in common iron and nickel ore, and every deep space scan showed nothing worth mining. This was exactly why it had been chosen 20 years ago for humanity's most important secret. Chen entered a complex code sequence into his navigation computer, and the asteroid's surface began to change. What had appeared to be solid rock split, apart like massive doors, revealing a hidden entrance large enough for ships 10 times the size of his courier vessel. He guided his ship through the opening and into the most advanced facility humanity had ever constructed. The interior of asteroid 2157 Gamma had been completely hollowed out and rebuilt. Massive hangar bays stretched in all directions, connected by corridors that had been carved through solid rock and lined with the best materials Earth could produce. Thousands of people worked in the hidden base, all of them sworn to secrecy that carried penalties more severe than death. This was Project Sanctuary, and it represented humanity's only real hope for survival in a hostile galaxy. Dr. Sarah Mitchell met Chen at the airlock, her face showing the exhaustion that came from working 18-hour days for the past 6 months. She had been the project's lead physicist for 12 years, ever since her groundbreaking work on quantum mechanics had caught the attention of Earth's intelligence services. Her gray hair and lined face made her look older than her 50 years, but her eyes still held the excitement of a scientist on the verge of changing everything. Chen followed her through corridors filled with technology that looked nothing like the primitive equipment the Galactic Assembly had mocked. The walls were lined with panels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and the air hummed with energy that made the hair on his arms stand up. Everything in the facility was built around theories that most of Earth's scientists still considered impossible. They entered a massive chamber that had been carved from the asteroid's core. Chen stopped walking and stared at the sight before him, even though he had seen it dozens of times during the past year. The ship was enormous, stretching nearly 800 meters from bow to stern, but its size was not what made it remarkable. The hull was black as the space between stars, and its surface seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal when viewed from different angles. General Marcus Stone walked up to join them, his weathered face showing satisfaction mixed with nervous anticipation. He had spent his entire military career preparing for threats that Earth's civilian government barely acknowledged. The Galactic Assembly might view humanity as harmless, but Stone knew that being weak in a dangerous galaxy was a death sentence, waiting to be carried out. Dr. Mitchell led them to an observation platform overlooking the ship. James, you've been coordinating intelligence from across the galaxy, but I want to make sure you understand what we've accomplished here. Every major civilization builds their warships the same way. Bigger engines, heavier armor, more powerful weapons, but they all exist in the same three-dimensional space that we experience in our daily lives. She activated a holographic display showing complex mathematical equations that hurt Chen's eyes to look at directly. 23 years ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected energy signatures that didn't match any known physics. We spent 5 years just trying to understand what we were seeing. 15 years ago, we realized that space has more dimensions than the 3 we can perceive. Most of these dimensions are too small to matter, but the 7th dimension is different. Chen studied the display, trying to understand concepts that challenged everything. He thought he knew about reality. You're saying there's an entire layer of space that we can't see? Dr. Yuki Tanaka approached from another control station, her arms covered in scars from years of working with experimental technology. She had lost 2 fingers in an explosion during the early testing phases, but had refused to leave the project. Think of it like this, Captain. Imagine you're a 2-dimensional being living on a piece of paper. You can only move forward, backward, left, and right. To you, up and down don't exist. But a 3-dimensional being could step off the paper completely, move to any position above or below you, and then step back onto the paper wherever they wanted. General Stone pointed at the massive black ship below them. The Quantum Vanguard can move between normal space and the 7th dimension. When she phases out, she becomes completely invisible to every sensor system the galaxy has ever developed, but she can still see and target ships in normal space. Chen felt a chill run down his spine as he began to understand the implications. You're telling me this ship can appear anywhere, attack, and disappear before the enemy can react? Dr. Mitchell nodded grimly. She's fast, heavily armed, and nearly indestructible when properly phased. But more importantly, she's the first of 7 ships. We have construction facilities on Mars, Europa, and 3 other asteroid bases. Each ship uses the same quantum dimensional technology, but with different capabilities and weapon systems. Lieutenant Alex Rivera joined them on the observation platform, wearing a flight suit unlike anything Chen had ever seen. The material seemed to shift color as he moved, and small displays on the sleeves showed readings that meant nothing to anyone not trained in quantum physics. Rivera had been selected as the Quantum Vanguard's test pilot, after demonstrating an unusual ability to remain conscious while phasing between dimensions. Rivera looked down at the ship with pride and anticipation. She responds to thought as much as touch. The quantum field creates a connection between the pilot and the ship's systems that's impossible to explain to someone who hasn't experienced it. Flying her is like becoming part of something larger than yourself. General Stone activated another display showing the ship's specifications. The Quantum Vanguard carries weapons based on the same dimensional technology as her drive system. The phase cannons can fire through dimensional barriers that normal shields can't stop. Her quantum torpedoes exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making them impossible to intercept or deflect. Chen walked to the edge of the observation platform and stared at the ship that represented humanity's answer to a galaxy that had dismissed them as primitive. How long until she's ready for combat operations? Dr. Mitchell checked her tablet, which displayed test schedules and system reports in flowing text that updated in real time. We completed the final engine tests yesterday. The weapon systems are fully calibrated. We're ready for the first full-scale combat trial. Lieutenant Rivera's expression grew serious. The question isn't whether the ship is ready. The question is whether humanity is ready for what happens when the galaxy learns what we've built. Once we reveal this technology, everything changes. There's no going back to being the harmless species that everyone ignores. General Stone nodded slowly. Intelligence reports indicate that the Crimson Fleet is planning their largest operation ever. They intend to attack the agricultural colonies in the Kepler system, which supply food for over 2 million humans. If we don't act, those colonies will be wiped out. Chen thought about Elena's humiliation at the Galactic Assembly and the years of diplomatic failures that had led to this moment. Humanity had been laughed at, dismissed, and abandoned by civilizations that considered themselves superior. But scientists working in secret had spent 2 decades developing technology that those advanced species couldn't even imagine. Dr. Mitchell walked to a control console and began entering commands that would prepare the Quantum Vanguard for her first mission. The aliens laughed at our chemical rockets and primitive weapons. They called us children playing with toys. Soon they'll learn that while they were congratulating themselves on their superiority, humanity was working on something that will redefine what's possible. The massive ship began to hum with energy that Chen could feel in his bones. Lights that existed in spectrums beyond normal human vision flickered along the hull, and the air in the chamber took on a taste like copper pennies and ozone. The Quantum Vanguard was awakening, and with her would come humanity's emergence as a power that the galaxy could no longer ignore. Lieutenant Rivera headed toward the ship's boarding ramp, his flight suit automatically adjusting its systems to interface with the vessel's quantum fields. Captain Chen, you can tell the diplomatic corps that their next meeting with the Galactic Assembly is going to be very different from the last one. Chen watched as the most advanced warship ever built by human hands prepared for a mission that would either save humanity's colonies or start a war that could consume the entire galaxy. The aliens had mocked Earth's technology and refused to help protect human settlements. Soon they would learn that laughing at humanity had been the worst mistake they could have made.